We're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. My name is Alex Dodds. I'm the Communications Director at Smart Growth America. And I want to say thank you for joining us here for the launch of Core Values, why American companies are moving downtown. This is new research that's out on our website this morning at smartgrowthamerica.org/core-values. You can find it there. In addition to the research itself, we list nearly 500 companies that have made moves to downtown in the last 5 years. On the website, you'll see that there's a map of all of the companies that we're going to be talking about today, as well as a sortable, searchable listing of all of them and where they moved and their previous addresses and their new addresses. Lots of information that I encourage you to go check out. It'll give some good context for the conversation that we're going to have today. I want to say hello, first of all, to everybody in the room here. Thanks for joining us. And I also want to say hello to everybody who's watching on the web. We are going to be talking about this also on Twitter at the hashtag Core Values if you want to join the conversation there. I want to say, first of all, thank you to all of the people who participated in this research and helped us. We talked to nearly 200 people to inform this research at chambers of commerce and companies who have been making these moves, and this research wouldn't have been possible without them, so thank you. I also want to thank Cushman and Wakefield and the George Washington University School of Business's Center for Real Estate and Urban Analysis. They were our partners on this research and were just immensely helpful in getting it out. And I also want to thank WalkScore. Part of the research talks about the change in these companies' walk scores when they moved from one location to another, and the folks at WalkScore were very helpful in helping us analyze that. So this morning's event is going to be in a few parts. First, we're going to hear from Chris Zimmerman, who's Smart Growth America's Vice President for Economic Development. He's going to give us an overview of the findings of the report that I mentioned. Then we're going to hear from Paula Munger, Director of Research at Cushman and Wakefield, and Patrick Lynch, Director of Research at the GW School of Business's Center for Real Estate and Urban Analysis. They were our research partners and are going to provide some national context for these findings. Then Jeff Anderson, Smart Growth America's President and CEO, is going to facilitate the first panel, which is going to have representatives from 3 of the companies that we spoke to as part of this research. Like I mentioned, there were over nearly 500 companies that we surveyed and sort of analyzed as part of this report. We're going to hear from 3 of them. Amy Ronneberg from Be The Match. She's the Chief Financial Officer there in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Jim Riley, the Vice President of Corporate Communications at Panasonic in Newark, New Jersey. And Jack Riley, Marketing Director and Senior Vice President of Fifth Third Bank in Eastern Michigan, based in Detroit. The second half of our program will talk about what companies looked for in their new locations. The first panel is going to talk a little bit about why the companies moved. The second panel is going to talk about what they looked for in the new location. Facilitating that will be Chris Zimmerman again, and then he's going to be joined by Michael Deemer, Executive Vice President of Business Development at the Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Mark Fisher, Vice President of Government Relations and Policy Development for the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, and Brad Lacey, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Conway, Arkansas Chamber of Commerce. So, without further ado, to kick us off, Chris Zimmerman.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you all for being here. For much of the 20th century, the growth pattern of American cities seemed driven by centrifugal forces. The advent of the automobile, flight from crime, noise and pollution, even the fear of nuclear attack were all reasons for people to take up residence in the suburbs. Much serious intellectual thought was devoted to the conviction that the city was doomed, best abandoned. Even Frank Lloyd Wright foresaw the disappearance of the city and saw it as a good thing. In the post-World War II era, a host of government policies at every level, federal, state, and local, including zoning laws, tax laws, housing finance, and infrastructure funding, accommodated this view and, to some extent, promoted its fulfillment. Residents by the thousands, especially those with good jobs and incomes, moved to suburban subdivisions outside city limits and kept moving farther out. Businesses followed, and by about 1970, the majority of jobs had left American cities for the suburbs. Increasingly, the prestige locations for business became suburban office parks, places like Research Triangle Park, Tyson's Corner, Silicon Valley. The central business district was replaced by the edge city, places accessible only by automobile, where any amenities are found inside in climate-controlled conditions and walking is limited to the journey across the parking lot. By the 1990s, it seemed that this was the permanent American business address, that growth in metropolitan areas would inevitably occur on the periphery, old-fashioned main streets being just that, quaint relics of a fading past, no longer relevant to modern commerce. From our vantage point midway through the second decade of the 21st century, it is clear that there has been a sea change. Evidence abounds that attitudes toward urban life, and most tellingly, the market situation in urban real estate, have shifted dramatically. City centers are reviving. There is a renaissance in American urban areas. People are moving back. People and businesses. To cite just a few recent studies, I'd note the work that Chris Leinberger has been doing examining the changing performance of walkable versus drivable commercial real estate in various metropolitan areas over the last 2 decades, Richard Florida's study of the movement of venture capital, and Joe Courtwright's recent analysis showing employment beginning to move back toward metropolitan centers since the recession. To a large degree, the shift appears driven by a combination of demographic and economic change, the millennial generation, the information economy, and so on, themes we'll have occasion to touch on later. For several years now, news reports each month attest that companies are moving back to core locations. It was the growing accumulation of such reports, in combination with other quantitative analysis, that led Smart Growth America to attempt to document the apparent trend and shed some light on its cause. Who are the companies moving from suburb to downtown, and why are they going there? SGA performed a broad search from general business publications to trade press, at first haphazardly, eventually more systematically, but very soon we had more than 100 cases. In the end, with the help of Cushman and Wakefield, we identified nearly 500 and were able to run some summary analysis. But we began by interviewing company representatives. Ultimately, we talked to about 10% of the companies in our sample, asking them to talk about why they made the decision to locate in a downtown rather than a suburban site. We also talked to people involved in recruitment, that is, economic development agencies, downtown associations, chambers of commerce. We asked them what they found to be successful in appealing to companies. And later this morning, you'll have the chance, as you heard, to hear from representatives of both groups. The sample includes companies from diverse industries of varying size. More than 10% are Fortune 500 companies. A dozen are on the Fortune's 2015 list of the 100 best companies to work for. They are moving to cities in every part of the country, not just the coasts and not just the big ones. The list includes more than 100 cities and 85 metropolitan statistical areas in every region of the country. The cases in our study include companies that have specifically relocated from suburban sites to downtowns, as well as those that open new branches or offices in downtown locations, those that consolidated to a downtown location, those that moved from one downtown to another, and brand new companies that chose to start in a downtown. Each of these companies had a choice about where to locate their business. A couple of decades ago, they would likely have been cutting their ribbons in suburban office parks. Each of them made a decision within the last 5 years to locate downtown. Now, let me note that by downtown, we do not necessarily mean central business district, although for most of the cases in our sample, that is where the new locations are to be found. Within their metropolitan areas, they also include secondary centers of business activity and places that might have been regarded as at least somewhat suburban. The common characteristic among the new locations for these companies is that they are walkable places with good transit availability. We were able to quantify this using walkscore.com, thanks to WalkScore for their assistance. Across our sample, for those firms for which we were able to derive walk scores, which was most of them for the new locations, we found that the average walk score prior to the move was 52. Now, if you're familiar with walkscore.com, you may know that on the walk score scale, this is just above the line that separates somewhat walkable from car dependent. In their new locations, the average walk score comes in at 88. This is just below the line that separates very walkable from walker's paradise. In addition to this 36-point jump in walk score, the corresponding numbers for transit rose by 27%. The average before transit score was 52. The average score of the new locations, 79. The bike scores also rose somewhat less dramatically by about 12 points. Beyond summary data, what was particularly interesting and what drove the idea for the project from the outset was the accounts given by people involved in these corporate location decisions. The interviews we conducted gave us a kind of focus group insight into the thinking behind these actions. Much of what they told us was unprompted other than a general question along the lines of, tell us why you made the decision to move downtown. We found what we heard most interesting. Through the course of some 100 interviews, about half with company representatives, we identified 6 major themes. Of particular note is the goal of attracting and retaining talented workers, especially the so-called millennial generation, that large demographic from about 18 to 34 years of age. As any number of studies have shown, this demographic group places the choice of where to live ahead of choosing a job. And they are far more interested than were their parents in living in urban areas with a diversity of opportunities and experiences. They are less interested in driving and more inclined to walk, bike, and take transit. Many of our interviewees highlighted the need to be attractive to such potential employees as a major consideration. For example, Adam Klein, chief strategist for the tech company American Underground in Durham, North Carolina, told us, "We wanted to be in an amenity-rich environment where our employees could walk to get a cup of coffee and participate in arts, music, and the excitement of downtown. We're able to show potential employees a cool office in the middle of downtown, and that has definitely helped us recruit people." Dr. Jeff Chell, president of Be the Match Bone Marrow Center of Minneapolis, represented here today, said, "We asked ourselves, 5 to 10 years from now, what's going to allow us to attract and retain a really mission-driven workforce? We knew the answer to that was a neighborhood with lots of restaurants and other amenities and better public transportation." Or, as Red Shiverick, president of Dakota Software in Cleveland, Ohio, put it, "Our younger employees don't want to go to a suburban office park. It's boring as all get out there. Here they walk outside and see cool stuff and it's fun. I wanted to be where they wanted to be." You'll see more of this in the report, along with a description of some of the other themes we found. We also discuss what companies are looking for in a downtown and what it means for local and state officials seeking to attract new investment to their communities and promote economic growth and fiscal stability. There are significant implications for a wide range of policies, including infrastructure, urban design, housing, public amenities, and place management, to mention a few. It is worth noting that, in general, the walkable urban locations these companies are opting for are not the cheapest sites. Companies are in many cases paying a significant premium to locate there. They are doing so because they see great places as offering them the best value for their money. We believe that any municipality has the potential to create the kinds of places these companies seek. For cities that want to attract these kind of companies, creating great quality neighborhoods is an economic development strategy that cannot be ignored. Smart Growth America is ready to help communities that are interested in pursuing such a strategy. Well, that's a summary of our report findings. Before I hand this on to our next speaker, I do want to thank the entire SGA team, quite a few of whom spent the last year working on this, and our partners, in particular, Cushman and Wakefield, and in very particularly, the Director of Research for Cushman and Wakefield, Paula Munger, who will be our next speaker. Paula, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming. We're really excited to be part of this research, partnering with Smart Growth America and GWU. We've done some other projects with GWU in the past. Cushman and Wakefield is committed to transforming the way the world works, shops, and lives. And the research that was uncovered in this report is really at the heart of that transformation. It's an important topic for us in the real estate services business. We hear from our clients all the time. One of the things that is keeping them up at night is this, what we're calling war for talent. The number one reason that was listed in Smart Growth in the core values report of why these companies move downtown. So it's a very competitive environment out there, and if you want to attract this bright young talent, you have to provide the whole package. So it's no longer just a job, it's no longer just an office. It's about the experience, it's about creating a sense of place. The generation entering the workforce now, or in the workforce, the millennials, I'm sure you've heard about them, they want more of a seamless experience in general. So those live-work play lines are a little more blurred than what we have seen from prior generations. And what that boils down to is providing the things that a city has. So place to live, retail, entertainment, restaurants, bars, and just in general, more opportunities for social interaction. Those are the key things that millennials are looking for. One of the things I find most interesting is when we're talking to a company these days, it used to be that when a company was looking to relocate, you would speak to the C-suite and the person in charge of real estate. And more, we're having human resources directors being part of these meetings. They are involved from the get-go, their input is tremendous, and they have a big say in the decision-making process of where these companies are going to locate. So they want to make sure that the physical space, again, I mentioned it's not just an office, so the physical space has to project their brand, their mission, and their culture, and it has to attract this young workforce. So everyone wants to work at a cool place. And despite having a mostly academic and analytical background, I've come to terms with the fact that we now somehow have to quantify cool. So when SGA asked us to partner on this, I started thinking about the evolution of this research that we've done on this particular topic and thought back to I think our first piece was in the fall of 2011. And at the time, we looked at a handful of cities where we saw this migration from the suburbs to the CBDs. And that was a time when it was very early on in the recovery. And in fact, it was so early on that a lot of times it didn't feel like a recovery at all. But our real estate market indicators were so telling. Everything, leasing, absorption, rental rates, occupancy rates, higher in the CBDs, lower in the suburbs, and just in general, the CBDs performing better. Even today, our last quarter of information, Q1 2015, we still see the CBDs edging out the suburbs. That's not to say the suburbs aren't holding their own. In fact, we're seeing activity, but there is a common theme. The most activity in the suburbs is happening around transit or in areas that provide this live, work, play environment, this whole sense of place. So jumping ahead to 2014, our consulting group put out a report focused solely on millennials, because that's what our clients wanted to hear about. Now, they were living the trend, but they didn't always quite know what to do with it. So it's a great piece on workplace strategy and really helping to guide companies how to use your physical location, your space and your location to attract this millennial population. We also did some research last year on transit-oriented development and infrastructure, and we chose 10 North American cities, which was very hard because we see this playing out all over, as you see in the core values report, where population growth had increased tremendously between 2000 and 2014. And we looked at the challenges that these cities face. Some of them are handling it much better than others, but it's not just about the cities, it's about the importance of public-private partnerships as well. And one of the things, to me, the sections that is most important in this core values report is this call to cities, really a step-by-step guide almost of how to attract this companies to your downtowns, what you can do, because I really feel like if you don't grab hold of this trend right now, which we've seen obviously for many years, and we think it's going to continue going forward, you're going to miss out, and you're going to miss out on being a world-class city, and I mean that for cities of all sizes. Looking specifically at the DC area, just very quickly, we're also seeing this trend play out. And for those of you who are not familiar with our market here, we actually weathered the recession pretty well, thanks to the government. But then we had government cutbacks, we had sequestration, we had government contractors cutting back. So the past couple of years, we've been lagging some of our counterparts across the country. But there are properties that are performing well. They're in the core, they're around public transit, or they're providing this live, work, play environment. And the properties that aren't doing so well, the traditional suburban office parks that Chris was talking about. And just briefly, I'll just end on a project that we're working on currently in Washington, D.C., the Hoffman-Madison waterfront. For those who know it, it's Southwest D.C. The first phase brings some pretty big numbers, bigger than City Center, which was our most recent large-scale urban development. So 1.7 million square feet of residential, retail, hotel, and office, all coming online at the same time in 2017. And I'll tell you that our brokers are not pitching an office, they're not pitching a store, they're not pitching a hotel or a place to live, they're pitching the lifestyle. And right now we're talking to some prospective tenants, and several of them would be making a move from the suburbs to the downtown. So I think that means that by 2017, Smart Growth America will have thousands of examples in their database of this type of trend. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Lynch now, who's the Director of Research at GWU's Center for Real Estate and Urban Analysis.
Thank you. So this research that Chris introduced relates to a trend that the George Washington University's Center for Real Estate and Urban Analysis has focused on now for a couple of years, and that is namely the shift back towards walkable urbanism. After 50 years of predominantly drivable suburban development patterns, we have begun to see evidence of pent-up demand for walkable urban places emerge. And we see that evidence in the form of price and rent premiums. So in three recent projects that the Center for Real Estate has completed, the so-called walk-up, wake-up calls that we have done in Boston, Washington, and Atlanta, we have found significant price premiums for all product types when they are located in a walkable urban place as compared to a drivable suburban place. And since we're on the topic of office in particular, let's talk about the office premiums. In Atlanta, we found that average office rents in walkable urban places were 30% higher than if they were located in a drivable place. In Washington, that same premium is 56%. And in Boston, that premium is 78%. And in fact, in Boston, we found that if you look at cap rates, which is how the market values a property given the same income, the cap rates are lower, which translates into a higher value. So in fact, in Boston, the value of an office property in a walkable urban place was 134% higher on average than office in a drivable place. So we see this as evidence of pent-up market demand for walkable urban places in this country. And we think the market is beginning to respond. And these walkable urban places in Washington, Atlanta, and Boston, which typically only make up about 1% of the metro area's land, these regionally significant walkable urban places in the latest real estate cycle have captured about 40 to 50% of the entire metro region's new income property development. So it's a dramatic shift. We hope to analyze this in further places across the country. Next week, we'll be releasing a similar report on 7 metro areas in Michigan, and we hope you can follow that. So with that, I will introduce Jeff Anderson, the president of Smart Growth America, to start us off on the panel.
As the panel, if the panel could come on up and join me up here. Everyone can hear me okay? Excellent. It's great to have you here with us this morning, and I really appreciated all the comments of the speakers before, and I am sort of doubly excited about this panel because we now get to actually hear from the companies who are doing the moves. And that was a really exciting part of this report for us, and we have some great speakers here today. First on my left is Amy Ronaberg. She's the Chief Financial Officer for Be The Match. I've got Jim Riley next, the Vice President of Corporate Communications at Panasonic in Newark. And Jack Riley is the Senior Vice President and Marketing Director for Fifth Third Bank in Detroit. And I should have said Be The Match is in Minneapolis. So we obviously looked at a lot of different companies and were focused on the moves. But in fact, obviously, those decisions don't come out of a vacuum. You were thinking about, and your companies were in different places before then. And I'd like to know just sort of the background. What was the origin? What got you thinking about where you were currently located? Where were you before? And what made you start thinking we might need a different location?
So thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Be the Match is about 900 to 1,000 employees, and currently we're located in 2 buildings about a half-mile apart, which creates a great deal of inefficiency for our organization as you're having to drive back and forth because there's not even a sidewalk to walk back and forth. And a few years ago, we started talking about the way we do business and realized that the building really didn't allow for the collaboration that we wanted. We're a very creative, innovative organization that's constantly looking for new algorithms to match patients and donors. Yet our building and our work environment really did not match the culture of our organization. So we started talking about a new way of doing business and wanting to have this open work environment where you could show up to work and work for your day, which may mean sitting in an office, it may mean sitting in a more collaborative bench area or even a couch that day. And as we started thinking about it, we realized the space we have doesn't really allow us to do that. And we started looking at about 65 different locations, and that's when it became very clear to us that our downtown location that we're currently building right now really not only allows us to have the culture in the building, but also all around us, and really is that creative, innovative, fun environment that we want our employees to come to and have that energy.
Terrific. Jim?
Yes, Jeff. So Panasonic Corporation of North America, until 2 years ago, was based in a corporate campus. 50-acre corporate campus, 3 huge buildings, 1,000 employees spread across this big space. And like Amy, we saw the way going forward as requiring more innovation, requiring more collaboration between our employees. So we are kind of divisionalized company in a lot of business areas. Most people know us for our consumer electronics products, but over 80% of our business in North America is in enterprise solutions or solutions for businesses that we provide. So that kind of business requires intense collaboration between different entities within the organization. So we went through a long search. It was more than 2 years. And we also took into account that for the future, we had set as one of our targets that we needed to be a leader in innovative green electronics. So we put a heavy emphasis on the environment and eco concerns. So we've been talking the talk. It was time for us to walk the talk. And as a result, we looked at over 40 locations, narrowed down to 3. And one of the major considerations for us was public transportation and finding an opportunity for our employees to use public transportation to get to work. We moved to the city of Newark, New Jersey in August 2013. And over the space of 2 years, we have seen our employees' use of public transportation go from 4% in our previous location to more than 57% in our current location. And we just extended an employee subsidy to permit, we believe that we can raise employee use of public transportation to 75%. So that's our target.
Terrific.
Our story might be slightly different. If you think about the world 6 years ago, we were engulfed in the biggest crisis that had hit the financial industry in our lifetime, for sure. And, we could take a couple different courses. We could kind of hide and ride out the storm, or we could take leadership role and over-communicate, reach out to our customers, and become really part of the community as well, which is what we did. We chose to lead. And we emerged from that crisis a much stronger bank. And the learning from that leading, it really gave us the confidence a few years later, when the revitalization of Detroit was on the still in the embryonic stage, to say we need to be part of that. We need to be leading, and as a Fortune 500 company moving down into the central business district, we can make a big statement. And it has to be more than just moving. It has to be sitting at the leadership table, contributing to the process over the next 5 years. We, of course, being a marketing guy, we branded it 5-3 and a D. And 5-3 and a D is an initiative that if we look back 5 years from now and it's just about relocating our office downtown, it'll be a failure, because the initiative's all about the contribution we're going to make over the next 5 years while we're there, and how we're going to transform our culture internally with our employees. We've committed $85 million to the city of Detroit in terms of small business loans, technical assistance, community outreach, sponsorships. Our building is a beautiful, iconic building downtown, and right across the street is a large public space called Hart Plaza, and we're going to help revitalize Hart Plaza and really be part of that team of business leaders that are in Detroit right now, driving truly a reurbanization of that city that is, I think, somewhat unprecedented, especially in terms of the speed in which it has been happening the last 5 years.
So you'll be okay if people tweet 5-3 in the D?
We'll be very okay about tweeting 5-3 in a day. Yes, that'll make me happy.
Okay. Well, so some of you, I think, alluded to this, but can you be a little more specific about when you were examining the 85 or 70 sites or other places? What really went into that? Did you say, well, we're at a walk score 52, we better get to at least 87? Or I know you looked for transit, but what were the specific pieces involved in that? Did you have, as Paula was saying, the involvement of your personnel department, or was it much more the facilities side? How did that unfold?
So we absolutely had our SVP of HR part of this, and really a leader at the table, in that we were looking, we call it project mobility, where how do we do work differently? And so when we looked at all the spaces, we started with 65, we came down to this location downtown, and it became very clear that this was going to be an enormous opportunity for our organization to attract and retain. In Minneapolis, there's an area called the North Loop, which is mostly our warehouse district, and it has really been an area that you kind of avoided for many years, and it's really started to revitalize. And I believe we got in at the perfect time. It is about 2 blocks from Target Field, so you have sports right there, you have arts, you have convention centers, restaurants. It really is just, you go to this area and it just, exudes life. And so we believed that this really allowed us to attract and retain those millenniums. We have a broad base of employees, from scientists to finance to IT, and we wanted to be able to attract a really diverse crowd of individuals into our location. We also knew that there was an opportunity, as we're hearing from our employees, the opportunity to be more active, and we have a very strong Live Well, Be Well program with our HR group, and realize that we are right on a key walking path. Today, I would say, I don't know how it's calculated, but our walk score is probably 0, in that nobody walks to our location because you can't walk to it. You have to take a highway to get there. This truly allows, there's a walking path that goes right past and connects to many of the locations around downtown, many biking trails, and again, mass transit was a huge opportunity. So we really involved far more than just the facilities. It really was led from a very strategic perspective with the entire executive team, and absolutely at the helm was our HR group.
Mm-hmm. Again, like Amy, our team was given a mandate by our CEO. It was led by the CFO, to whom facilities reports, but facilities and HR really led it. It was a great collaboration, and I think a lot of emphasis was placed on where will our employees be most comfortable. We previously had, in our previous location, we had one of the large buildings a converted warehouse with an 11-acre roof, just a huge place. Didn't have very much natural light, so having a building that would allow us the opportunity to bring natural light to the employees was a very, very important factor. Again, something that would allow us to use solar and other sustainable energy, reduce our use of fossil fuels, reduce our use of water. Those are all important things for us. And at the same time, we wanted to be able to make a difference in the community. Newark was in the process of a revitalization under Mayor Booker, who has gone on to become Senator Booker. And that revitalization is continuing under Mayor Ras Baraka. And we think that by being part of the fabric of the city, bringing our employees to the city and generating economic activity, we're making a benefit, providing a benefit and helping to spur that revitalization.
So our route to our building started actually with us looking downtown for a branch location. That was our initial thought, that we would go and put a branch in. We engaged with Bedrock Real Estate, Dan Gilbert's company, who was and is really at the forefront of the revitalization of Detroit. And the more time we spent walking around, so we were walking around with our head of our retail division, retail banking division. We had our facilities folks, and kind of marketing is always along for, okay, how can we make something of this, make it cool. But the more time we spent down there, and the more we spent with Bedrock and heard their plans and saw their vision and saw what this could be, we started to kind of bubble that up. Our president, Dave Gerardot, we brought him down. And when he kind of got the fever, that's what really started. And then it was about, can we find a great building? Can we find a building that makes a statement downtown? And we were very fortunate that one of the Bedrock buildings was an absolutely iconic building in downtown Detroit. It is the gateway to the Central Business District from the riverfront, and it's the One Woodward building. It was designed by Minoru Yamasaki, who was the architect of the World Trade Centers, and you see a lot of the cues from our buildings into the original Trade Center. So it felt so good, and it was really the right building, the right time, and we kind of scrapped the branch location. So let's bring the whole headquarters down. Let's bring the gang down, and we'll make it. We'll go all in.
Excellent. You've talked some about the millennials and the need to attract talent, and haven't talked about the need to attract Gen X. Thank you.
No sympathy here from a boomer.
Well, look, boomers get their fair share of attention too.
That's for sure.
And that was one of the biggest reasons, certainly cited by, down the list, every company we talked to was about that. But we also heard about corporate leadership and triple bottom line outcomes of trying to not only sort of accomplish your business mission, but an environmental mission, a social mission, as well as, and this panel has been kind of striking in how much you also have discussed the internal needs of your employees, whether it's getting more natural light or just more collaboration. But what were sort of if I pushed you and said top 3 factors, what are the top 3? What really sold you on the need to move to your locations? And we don't have to go in this regimented like one. Anybody can. We got started that way, but we can break out and do something new.
Okay, so top 3, absolutely retain and attract employees, not just the millennials.
Thank you.
Because we all love sports and arts and food.
Right.
So brand, we really had an opportunity to brand ourselves. We are in a location with high traffic, foot traffic, bike traffic, trains, where when you walk out of our building, you literally stumble upon the train station. And so with Target Field there, you're looking at 30,000 individuals on a regular basis walking by. So we felt this would be a great opportunity to brand who we are. The third,
We'll come back to you for
We'll
a
come
third.
back,
We'll go to
yeah.
Jack. We'll mix it up.
I would say clearly number one was our ability to live our core values as a corporation. In our purpose statement, we say that our mission is to improve lives and the well-being of our communities. And what a great opportunity to do it, and to live those values in a very demonstrative way. So that was number one. Number two was, from a reputation standpoint, I mentioned earlier, this is really a leadership strategy in the market. So from a branding and a reputation standpoint, this provided us with a tremendous platform to talk about who we are as a bank and what we represented. And I truly believe that it will enhance our overall reputation in the market as we move forward with this initiative. And then finally, of course, is business connectivity. When you're sitting at the leadership table with really the top business leaders in the market, there's great connectivity there, and there's great opportunity for us to convert that connectivity into wonderful business for us, for the bank, and of course for the city. So a fast follow would be the ability to transform our culture. I can't say that was part of necessarily the original decision, but once we got into it and we started to get into other people's office space downtown and learn about all the things that you all have been talking about, although it may not have been initially our deliberate purpose, it is absolutely taking over as one of the highlights of what we hope to do when we're down there.
Great. Jim?
So, Jeff, you required us to give a rank order here. And so number one, I think, is, and this echoes what Amy and Jack talked about, but living our values. So contributing to society is very important. Also, supporting our eco goals is a very important target. So we wanted to enable our employees to really share in that and allow them, or create an opportunity for them to live those goals as well. And the employees are wholeheartedly embracing that. So we're very pleased with that. Beyond that, I think in our previous location, we had been in one place for 40 years, 40 years, which is a long time to be anywhere. And you fall into certain habits of thought, and by taking the entire organization and moving it from this suburban corporate park to the core of the city, 1 block from Newark Penn Station, we saw the opportunity to allow people to look at what they're doing and look at our business in a different way. And we saw this as a possible way to spur innovation, and we've been very pleased, and our employees have embraced the opportunity. So those are two. I didn't get the third one.
That's fine. We'll come back to that. We have a couple of questions coming in from Twitter or God knows where. But anyway, they're here. So what do other business leaders think about your move, and what's been the reaction amongst your peers?
So I will go beyond business leaders in the Twin Cities. We've just had an outpouring of excitement. I think it's really opened people's eyes as we're starting to build this building to start asking the question of who is Be the Match. You know, we've had people say, "Oh, are you the dating service?" No, we're not the dating service. We're a life-saving organization, and it's really
Might be an interesting way to get more donations.
Maybe. I'll take that back. It's really opened people's eyes, and we've had just an incredible amount of excitement in the location and around us. We've just had an outpouring, whether it's been the Twins or other businesses around us. And I think bringing 900 people to that area too, it'll be one of the largest organizations in that area, which is really exciting just for the flow of individuals and more people walking the streets, more people going to restaurants, that type of thing. So it's really been a very positive impact to that location.
Mm-hmm.
So Panasonic's move to Newark involved the building of the first office tower in a quarter of a century. So naturally, people stood up and took notice. And I think we got on, or we helped Newark to get on people's radar as a potential for locating a business. And really, I think in the New York metro area, Hoboken has been very well developed, and Jersey City. Newark is the next city over. And I think we helped to accelerate the movement towards people in considering locations saying, well, why not Newark? Mm-hmm. So I think that was a major contribution that we were able to make.
One of the things, and this sort of gets to the next question about what the city has done to make your move possible, but and we were talking about this last night, Jack, how much of the leadership in Detroit has come from the private sector, and yet there's obviously a city role in all of this. And so maybe you can speak to sort of what the role of the private sector has been, because it's definitely been sort of a cadre of folks in Detroit, and what the city has done in each of your cases to help you move and to sort of enable this change.
Well, the city has certainly been our biggest cheerleader. They have done things that were heretofore unprecedented in Detroit in terms of breaking down bureaucratic barriers that businesses often had in terms of relocating in Detroit. The private sector, I think one of the great things about this revitalization, that it really is being driven by the private sector, and not initially started off with Bedrock and Dan Gilbert, but it is now a cadre of business leaders throughout the city that are forming not so much a coalition, but just a breadth of development in all the various neighborhoods of what you would consider downtown Detroit. It's really amazing to see, and much of it's really cool. There's central core corridors, what we call Woodward Avenue corridor, where there is a mass transit, a rail system that's being constructed now that will allow people to move easily up and down the corridor, and that will connect from our Midtown and New Center area all the way into downtown, into the bottom of the central business district. And all of that is coming together and merging. There's great synergy there. And of course, the city is quite involved in all that. And I will note that Mayor Duggan attended our leadership meeting when we announced to all of our employees that we were moving downtown. He was there for that celebration. He also attended our press conference when we announced. And he's very supportive of what we're doing. In fact, I put one of my Fifth Third pins on the mayor that day, and he was later in a press conference for something else that was going on in City Council, and he still had the Fifth Third pin on, and I was so gratified to see that he didn't just tear it off, as soon as he left our space. So we feel like we have great partnerships with the city. We know we have great partnerships with the other business leaders. It's been an exciting and gratifying process.
Thank you. So in Panasonic's case, the city of Newark has been great. The mayor, at the time of our announcement, personally came, spoke to our employees, made himself available, his staff available to answer questions about the city. We had terrific cooperation from the local organizations related to the city or that do business in the city, NJ Transit, which is our public transit, which occupies the better part of Newark Penn Station came and gave presentations to our employees, helped them figure out the best ways to make their way to their new work location from their homes, and also the local police chief and the leadership of the police department spoke to employees to ease any concerns they might have about living or working in a core city. So we cannot say anything but good things about how the city of Newark has helped us and is still helping us with our transition.
And Amy, you talked about the light rail and people being able to get out and walk and other things. Just to sort of put a fine point on this, I mean, does that mean that transit, that sidewalks, that cultural trails, that farmers markets, are those economic development strategies?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, and really key for us too. And it's very new here in Minneapolis, and it's particularly the North Loop. Our transit station is fairly new within the last year, and so this is a huge opportunity. And I think it absolutely speaks to the economic development too of bringing 900 employees to that location.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to echo Jack and Jim's comments on our city. We had a very similar situation too, where we had some employees that were concerned about moving downtown. The chief of police came and spoke to all the employees. We've had mass transit come to speak to them, to all of our employees to talk about utilizing the various different options. We've brought in the restaurants. We're going to be bringing one of the Fulton Beer is next to us, so that'll be one opportunity for the employees too. But the city has really gotten behind this, and as we've listened to employee concerns, which haven't been significant, but if it is a concern, it is significant to that person, and the city has really rallied around us and come in and talked to our employees about the various concerns they have.
And one of the things we definitely heard from a number of companies that have made their moves is that where people had concerns before, once they got there, they found a real mismatch between perception and reality. And that was something we heard, from a lot of the different people that we interviewed. So you all have been involved in really leading change in your companies and in the cities you're located in, and that makes you the ideal people to ask this question because you've been directly involved in the move. This is from Jackie on Twitter because my staff wanted me to know now where they're coming from. I want my company to move to a walkable location. What do I do? So another opportunity to get other companies moving in the same direction. What should Jackie do?
Well, I think the paper and the research that you have published is a great opportunity
Great
to start
answer.
with. I mean, it really is, I think, speaks to all the positive reasons, and it is hard to put an ROI or a number on fun and cool factor, but there is the reality there, and it does cost when you have employee turnover. It is hard to retain, employees in certain locations. It's hard to attract employees in certain locations. And I think the paper speaks really well about the benefits of moving to a walkable location, moving to a downtown environment. And it is from a culture perspective, but you also then can speak to the CFO and the fact that there are financial benefits also to moving to a downtown location.
Yeah, I would suggest, in addition to the empirical evidence in the research, that you meet with the Downtown Development Authority. They will be able to talk about the advantages, and they'll help you with your employees. One of the things we've also done in advance of moving is hold events downtown where our employees come down. They have the opportunity to take advantage of whatever the social activity might be, but also just to be able to walk the sidewalks and see the energy and feel it. I mean, to me, that has been key to helping everyone kind of ease some of the issues that they might have thought they're going to confront when we move downtown.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, I mean, and we heard this from other companies as well, some of the people who have lived and worked in the suburbs haven't been downtown in years and years and years and don't know, and we'll hear this in places like Cleveland, don't know what's been going on, or in Detroit or other places. And, so they have a sort of perception that's a 15-year-ago perception that still lingers in that case. So you've made the move. Our other two panelists are in the process. What's been the effect on your employees and the corporate culture and sort of how we know people are commuting differently? What else is different for them?
I think in terms of the amenities or work styles, we went from a 37% closed door office rate to a 5%, less than 5% closed door office rate. So basically we have an open plan, lots of spaces for ad hoc meetings as the need arises. And all of this is geared to promote the kind of collaboration that I think each of the panelists have discussed as a high priority. We are not missing any opportunity to encourage our employees, communicate to our employees that this is the way of the future. We really need to put all of our strengths together and draw on all the resources we have in order to be successful at the kind of businesses that we are transforming into these days. So very positive. Employees love the light. Employees love the fact that we are, as I said before, walking the talk. We are we're making eco contributions and we're contributing to the community. So it's something that I do not think would have been possible in our previous location. So it's been transformative.
You've all talked about more employee collaboration, both internally and externally. Is this a broader, and we certainly heard this from other companies, is this a broader shift in the economy? I mean, sort of one school of thought is that, as we become more connected electronically and through all the other technology means we have, the need for physical connection goes away. But in fact, it seems to be the opposite. The more connected you are, the more connected you need to be. Are you seeing that not only in your company, but is that a broader trend you're seeing in the business world?
I think so, and we really are allowing folks not to necessarily have to come into work every day. They could work from a coffee shop and everything, but we've created the technologies that really keep that open communication style. I do see a broad change, though, and I think it is about when you are together and you're working on a project that you're not in an 8x8 workstation that has high walls. We're putting you in a room so that those 10 people can really work together really well. And as we toured a lot of different locations and got a lot of ideas, that definitely seems to be the trend, at least in Minneapolis and St. Paul, where it really is bringing people together to be able to work in a much more collaborative workspace so that it does help folks to be more creative, more innovative, more collaborative. So I think there is a changing. I think it is not necessarily that you have to always be in the office, but when you are and you're working on that type of project, that you are working very close together and really utilizing the skills of everyone to bring that project forward.
Mm-hmm. I think it's an imperative that we work differently with our move. We have something at Fifth Third we call One Bank, and that's where various groups get together to talk about customer needs and try to figure solutions out. So if we have a commercial real estate customer, for example, you not only have the real estate relationship manager, but you might have, say, the leasing guy in or the marketing guy, or you have the CFO in talking about, what can we help this customer with, that type of thing. And yet our workspace, so that goes on all the time at the bank, and yet our workspace is set up in all of these individual resident offices. And so unless you get the meeting together, the collaboration doesn't take place. We want to set a workspace up where the collaboration just takes place organically all day long, that you don't have to have a quote meeting. And I would echo what Amy said. I mean, I think we study the way our people work, and if you're a good banker, you're not in the office all that much. You're working mobily, and so we had to make sure that our new work space reflects that. Mm-hmm. And we need it to be progressive. I think if we're going to transform our culture, we have to be thinking, what is it going to look like 5 and 10 years from now, as opposed to, just doing the same kind of build out that we currently have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would just like to add that employees, given the opportunity, will again embrace collaboration. It's a kind of empowerment that might not have been possible in a more linear sort of structure, but in just in a physical place where there are not many walls, where again 90% of our employees have a direct view of the outside, filled with light, very few closed doors. It's the kind of creative atmosphere where a lot of innovation can flow, and we're very pleased with that, and we don't know how that would have been possible any other way than by this move.
Terrific. Well, please join me in thanking the panel, and I want to thank you all personally as well, just for your time and your willingness to participate with us. It's been terrific, and I've enjoyed getting to know you and your company's work, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
And you can, and now I will invite our next panel up, and that will be hosted by, once again, Vice President for Smart Growth, Chris Zimmerman. Chris.
Thanks. I think you lost some notes.
Oh.
Thank you. Well, while they're coming up, let me just say that having heard from some representatives of companies that have made the decision to locate in a walkable urban area, we want to talk to some of the folks who are on the sort of recruiting side, the people who need to make those places the vibrant, exciting destinations that will attract such companies. And each of the folks up here now have been involved in trying to bring in those kind of companies and create the kind of vitality that their communities are looking for by creating the kind of places that companies want to be in. So let me start first by just asking each of you to introduce yourself and say a little bit about the town that you're working in. We'll start with Michael.
Great. Well, Chris, thank you for having us here today, and thank you for the great work that Smart Growth America is doing on what's happening in our downtowns. My name is Michael Deemer. I serve as Executive Vice President for Business Development at the Downtown Cleveland Alliance, which is Cleveland's Downtown Business Improvement District. And there are a lot of exciting things going on in our downtown right now. A lot of people know we've got a pretty good basketball team in Cleveland, which we're very excited about. But what a lot of people don't realize is the level of economic activity that's taken place coming out of the recession, especially in the downtown. We have over $5.5 million of development taking place in our downtown. We're also really emerging as a leader in talent attraction, and it's a big theme today. And that's not something that people commonly across the country associate Cleveland with. There's some great research coming out of Cleveland State University, for example, showing that the Cleveland metropolitan area is actually 10th in the country over the last several years in attracting advanced degree holders in the workforce. And that's actually canceling out some of the population loss that the metropolitan area is seeing. And a lot of that high skill talent is concentrating in the downtown area and the surrounding neighborhoods. And that's you're really beginning to drive additional investment in the downtown area. The other thing that I want to point out that people may not know about Cleveland is we've got a wonderful, compact, walkable downtown that we'll talk about more, very transit connected, the only light rail system in Ohio, and a nationally recognized bus rapid transit system, all of which are kind of laying the foundation for the progress that was the subject of the report.
Very good, thank you. Brad?
I'm Brad Lacey. I'm President and CEO of the Conway Area Chamber of Commerce in Conway, Arkansas. I bring a smaller city perspective today. Conway is located about 25 miles northwest of Little Rock. We are part of the North Little Rock Conway MSA, very fast-growing city. In 1990, there were 26,000 people there. Today, approaching 65,000. And so we have seen a lot of growth. We are a little different than what you might consider a typical suburb of a larger city, in that we're the secondary job market in the MSA. So 22,000 people drive into Conway to work every day. And a very diverse economic base there. Our largest employer is Axiom, which is a publicly traded IT company that started in Conway. So we have 2,000 IT professionals there, recruited HP to town in 2008. And so IT is really the basis of the city in many ways. We're also very much a college town. We have 3 colleges and universities in the city. And so we do have that suburban element of the population, but we're also very much a college town. We're also very much an employment hub. And over the last 15 years, we have concentrated on renovating and renewing downtown Conway with quite a bit of success.
My name is Mark Fisher. I'm Vice President of Government Relations for the Indy Chamber. The Indy Chamber is the Economic Development Corporation for the city of Indianapolis, but also we do a lot around entrepreneurial services, and we also market the central Indiana region. Indianapolis is the geographic heart of the state of Indiana. We're the state capital. We were actually laid out by Alexander Ralston, who was an understudy of Pierre L'Enfant. So we're actually modeled after Washington, D.C. Starting in about the 1950s, we became very suburban oriented. And then in the late 60s, we consolidated our city and county government. So we are a city and a county all in one. So we have 400 square miles of roads and streets to maintain. And so it has traditionally been very sprawl oriented, but we are right now taking steps to develop our downtown and not just downtown, but the surrounding neighborhoods and very authentic urban neighborhoods. We're rewriting our zoning code for the first time since the 1960s. We've adopted complete streets policies, investing in mass transit. We've had a lot of downtown multifamily housing spring up, and so that's been all very positive in our city. And so it's definitely a paradigm shift for Indianapolis. The housing and the activity you see downtown Indianapolis wasn't there 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago. So it's been exciting to see the energy in downtown Indianapolis.
Let's get into a little more detail on that. And I'll start with you, Mark, and I want to ask you a really technical question just to start us off. What's the best place to get a cup of coffee in downtown Indianapolis?
My house? No. We have 2 cultural districts that are just on the periphery of the central business district, on our angled streets, and so they've had a lot of good local restaurants. The locally sourced food movement has really taken hold in these districts. So the areas called Fountain Square and then Massachusetts Avenue are the 2 areas probably that you're going to find the best cup of coffee.
Michael, Brad, how about to get a drink after work?
Definitely downtown Conway. You see many of the same things happening there with locally owned establishments popping up. It's encouraging for us to see college students who graduate and choose to stay in Conway and start a business. And we've seen that happen. When you said coffee, it made me think of a young man who started his own coffee shop last year, and he's been very successful and is getting ready to open his second one in town.
Well, a couple of years ago, it might have been easy to answer that question in downtown Cleveland by saying, go to East 4th Street or go to West 6th Street. Those were really the entertainment hubs where you're likely to find, a great cup of coffee or a great brew. But the exciting thing about what we're seeing in downtown Cleveland today is that, we're seeing mixed-use development really across the downtown neighborhood. So the fun thing, whether you're working, living, or visiting in our downtown, is there are multiple entertainment pockets to go to, whether it's Playhouse Square, the Gateway District, where the Cavs and the Indians play, whether it's our waterfront or whether it's the Warehouse District. We have a number of entertainment zones that have popped up across downtown. The other thing that's we're bringing back is we have 2 distilleries downtown now. We have Cleveland Whiskey and Portside Distillery. So not only can you go get a good craft brew or a cup of coffee somewhere, you can get something a little harder if that's your taste.
Well, of course, I asked the question not just to promote imbibing, but because, of course, we've been hearing that a lot of what companies are looking for is a great place to live and work and play, and this is kind of part of it. And your responses indicate the degree to which that's clearly part of what you're about in your downtowns. But I'd like to ask you to kind of explore that a little further. In what ways have you seen that play out? The connection between these kind of amenities, this kind of the fact that whereas a few years ago, for instance, Michael, you might have only had a couple places you could point to. Now it's it's much more diverse. And how does that play out in terms of what companies are looking for in locating and recruiting both companies and talent to your downtown?
Well, I think as we heard a little bit from the previous panel, that really the advantage that a downtown has over more suburban locations is, we do have the opportunity to offer a lot of amenities for workers and clients in a very connected, walkable way, where you can just walk outside your door and you have a full menu of options of places to spill over for the work meeting at the end of the day, or to go entertain clients. And that competitive advantage is really making a difference now, because as we hear over and over again, the millennial workforce, millennials are going to comprise over half the workforce in just a few years. Every employer knows that they're competing for that talent and that they need to offer a work experience, not just a job. And we hear that over and over again. And I think that's what's really allowed us to turn a corner in terms of business attraction and expansion in downtown over the last few years.
So let me ask each of you to talk about, even more specifically, about particular company that kind of exemplifies what you're seeing and what you needed to do to attract them and why it is they made the decision. Mark, I know there are a couple of kind of high-profile companies in particular I know of, and Rolls-Royce and Cummins, and some of them are quoted in our report. But give an example that you think kind of exemplifies what's going on.
I think within the span of about 6 months, a few years ago, we were able to recruit 2 coast-based IT firms, one from Boston, one from Silicon Valley, to invest in our downtown. They went into vacant office space, and they cited the affordability, but also the day that they announced that they were going to be hiring in Indianapolis, they were holding job fairs on our urban campus. So having the direct tie to a research university, to an urban campus, that supply of young and motivated talent was certainly a driver. The amenities that we have in downtown Indianapolis, I think, are largely supported by our convention business. We're a very compact downtown, which helps us attract conventions. And those conventions really do, and the sporting events really do provide that steady revenue stream for restaurants, the types of restaurants and bars that are going to attract the talent. And so we didn't really have the housing stock, and now the housing stock is really catching up. But that availability of talent and being able to pull people right from a university into the job seamlessly was very critical.
Brad, you're kind of, as you said, a different example, and makes the point that we try to make in the report, that this isn't just about the biggest metropolitan areas, cities of 1 million people. It seems to be happening in smaller urban areas as well. And of course, you've had this tremendous growth. You've also made some headlines about attracting some of the sort of information economy, knowledge economy kind of firms. Talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing and what firms are looking for in a place like Conway.
Well, as everyone has said, it's access to talent. For us, having the 3 institutions there is the biggest advantage we have if we create the type of city that's attractive to the 21 or 22-year-old when they leave. I mean, that's really why we've grown as fast as we have over the last 25 years, is we've been able to provide employment opportunities, and then kids choose to stay.
Because they graduate with their degree, they could go anywhere.
That's right.
You need some of them to actually stay there.
That's
and
right.
be there for the
And they do. And so now, we see this entrepreneurial culture developing with, as I said, the college student who graduates and wants to do their own thing. We also see, Axiom has been there for 40 plus years. So we're very good at data. And you have people that choose to start their own business who have spent a number of years with that company. And so we're seeing a lot of startups spinning out of that organization. What we've seen most recently is that downtown is really the hottest location for us from an office standpoint. We heard the other panelists talk about the cool factor, and that's legitimate. I mean, we hear it all the time as we walk these people through spaces, and they'll comment, well, this is really cool, or this isn't very cool. And so, we know what shows well, and, if you want to get into the details, for us, it's exposed brick walls, the large, old windows in some of these buildings are perfect for what these organizations want.
So these are going to be in basically legacy buildings. I mean, these are older buildings that are being renovated, and so the old buildings you have are an asset that you're able to leverage.
That's right. That 10 years ago, where the upper floors were vacant. There might have been something street level, but we're seeing an entire shift in real estate ownership downtown. We're seeing people aggressively go in and buy property that isn't for sale. Which, again, 10 years ago, something in downtown might have been on the market for months.
Interesting. Michael, an example?
Well, I think an example that comes to mind is, and it's one that is quoted in the report. Brand Muscle was a marketing and software company that was based in one of our suburbs outside of Cleveland, and they sort of fit the profile of the kind of company we're talking about. Technology-oriented, very young workforce, and they really explored all their options about whether they would stay and grow in the suburbs, move to a different suburb, look at downtown, and I think that what happened there was the CEO heard loud and clear from his workforce that they wanted to be downtown. A number of them live downtown. We have a very similar phenomenon going on in downtown Cleveland, as Bradley discussed in Conway, where we're adapting older historic buildings into residential and mixed uses. That's really growing the downtown population and creating a real work-live dynamic. And that was certainly at play with Brand Muscle. Incidentally, the Phil Alexander, Brand Muscle CEO, recognized early in the process that there'd probably be an opportunity to help him save a little bit on parking expenses, because as more of his workforce lived downtown, that they could just walk to work. And parking is something that all downtowns have to grapple with, and the work-live dynamic is helping to address that issue. But Brand Muscle brought nearly 200 people into downtown. They're continuing to grow, and they went into kind of a mid-modern building that was renovated by Brand Muscle and their landlord into a really cool, modern, fun, contemporary space. It overlooks a park that was recently renovated and is activated on a weekly basis by Downtown Cleveland Alliance with food trucks and other programming. So it was that it was the walkable environment. It was the cool, fun factor of the office space itself. It was the physical location close to the renovated park. and the fun activities there, and very transit connected. It's within a couple of blocks of 2 bus rapid transit lines and the light rail system.
Very good. I want to change gears a little bit now. We've been concentrating a lot on the sort of big factor for companies, being this attracting kind of young talent, people who have skills, who are professionals, who are probably going to earn professional incomes, and that's clearly a major factor. But a downtown needs people of all different incomes, and I think one of the questions a lot of people have is, if this is successful, that's great. But what about all the folks that aren't going to be earning, the top dollar, and what does that mean for a viable downtown? So let me start with you, Mark, and what does this mean in Indianapolis, and what are you doing?
We certainly have seen rents rise in downtown, but very strategically, the city of Indianapolis has been very supportive of Section 42 affordable and senior housing in some of the hottest real estate markets. So actually during the downturn, a lot of our market rate real estate developers turned to affordable housing tax credits as a way to have a cash infusion in development. So we actually have a good mix. I'm sure there are going to be people that say we need more affordable housing, but we've certainly very deliberately sought out, because we are such a service-oriented economy in downtown, we need to make sure that the people that make our city run have a place to live. And our research university, IUPUI, that's a mouthful. It's Indiana University and Purdue University in Indianapolis, has traditionally been a commuter campus, and they've recently seen that students are wanting to have that urban experience. They want to go to school at night, or they're attracting more traditional college students that are coming right out of high school that want that urban experience. But those kids often work. Either they work during the day and go to school at night, or vice versa. And so having housing that appeals to them as well is very key. And hopefully, once we're able to get them into the university, get the housing, and they choose to stay downtown once they get their degree.
And you really pointed to a number of different groups, from seniors to service workers to students, the different types of household and their different needs, different income levels. One of the things that points to is differences in the kinds of housing available. And I think a lot of places find that the housing stock we have, we didn't necessarily build for that variety. We've had, for certain types, we had housing for families with children, and we've had, the apartment for the young couple maybe. But they're in certain forms and not a lot in between. So one of the questions is, the availability of a different kind of stock of housing and different types of product. And Brad, can you address that? How that's shown up in your own market with some different approaches to the supply of housing?
Sure. One of our colleges, Hendrix College, which is adjacent to downtown, had a large tract of land that had never been developed. It was about 100 acres. And so as a part of their master plan, they decided to convert that into a new urbanism community. And I think there was a lot of skepticism about how it would be received. Long story short, very successful, very successful. In fact, when you talk about quality of place and how important it is to a company, an existing company in town, Southwestern Energy, a big natural gas exploration company, was looking for a regional headquarters in Conway, and they had selected a site that was closer to the interstate, bought it, and were sort of planning it. And when Hendrix Village became public, they bought a site there too. And they ended up doing, 150,000 square foot gold LEED certified office building as an anchor to Hendrix Village, even though they had another site that they still owned, because they wanted the walkability factor. They liked the idea of having single family housing adjacent to that facility. So what we have seen is an area that really had no housing now is a very viable single family housing neighborhood, and often those houses lead the market in value.
These are smaller lots than would have been typical before, or that most local developers would have thought was what
Well,
you could sell.
and in fact, we had to change some zoning ordinances in the city to allow it to occur, which is something that a lot of cities probably don't think about when they start talking about the type of density that we're seeing develop in Hendricks Village. I mean, it wasn't allowed under the zoning laws we had at the time, but it is very successful. They've set their own comps, and as I said, they lead the market in value almost every month.
So that's interesting. A new housing product that turns out to be more successful than people had thought, and in order to come about, needed some public policy change.
That's right.
And then leads to the attraction of a major employer.
That's right.
That's, I think, a very significant story that has lessons for many communities.
And I think, too, you know, we talk about millennials, but I think downtown and good design and all of these things are really universal. I mean, they're not just attractive to millennials. They're attractive to boomers and Generation X. And we see that. I mean, a really good neighborhood, just as in Hendricks Village, all of those people are living there.
Well, I want to come back to the public policy question, but first, Michael, talk a little bit about the role of downtown in welcoming all parts of the community and bringing people together, because I think that is a concern for a lot of people about, is this new success of downtown something that will divide or something that will bring people together?
It's a great question, and I'd echo the comments that my fellow panelists have made, because it's something that I think that all downtowns are keeping an eye on, because we do want and need our downtowns to be a place not just for the entire community to come work and seek entertainment, but also to enjoy the benefits of that work-live experience that we keep talking about. And in Cleveland, it's interesting what's happening in downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods. Historically, we haven't had much residential population in downtown, especially in the post-World War II era. It's really within the last 25 years that we've seen steady population growth downtown. And we've had a fair amount of historic buildings that were available to be renovated and converted into housing. So it really wasn't as if people were being displaced as new market rate housing was being added to the market. And as these renovations are occurring, part of the name of the game for us from a development standpoint is we do want to push rental rates upwards in order to be able to support new construction downtown, and we're just beginning to see that. We actually commissioned a 5-year visioning and strategic plan last year that we called Step Up Downtown, and as part of that process, they flagged social equity in housing as something that we should begin to keep an eye on, because although not an issue yet, left unchecked, it could very well become one. We have the advantage of having a lot of affordable real estate in our surrounding neighborhoods that are very close in and very transit connected. So that creates an opportunity for us on the one hand. But at the same time, we are seeing our developers that are adding new housing as part of their projects address workforce housing concerns into them. A great example of that is a big $180 million development. It was all adaptive reuse that opened at one of our main intersections in Cleveland, East 9th and Euclid Avenue. It was a combination of the renovation of an historic office tower into a hotel and luxury apartments, an old bank space that was converted into a 30,000 square foot grocery store, and an adjacent former office building that was converted into what was essentially workforce-oriented housing. The way that the developer came at it was they provided the same level of finish that the high-end apartments had. But they made them smaller units. They were, studios and one-bedroom units that were, by Cleveland standards, micro units. They were, probably 600 to 900 square feet. which is small in our market, but a nice finish, created an opportunity for folks to be able to live right there in the complex with the same amenity mix as everybody else. And that seems to have worked quite well. So that's a model that we're talking to other developers about as they begin to plan out their projects.
I think that you make a particularly important point with regard to kind of where you are in this cycle as more communities have this sort of rebirth of downtown. In the early stages, they often have plentiful supply of housing that's affordable, and the main focus has to be on how do we get investment in here. So there's that attention. As things go on, you get more successful, there becomes a bigger question of, can you have places for everybody in your community, including all the range of the workforce that you need. Many places I think that have been really successful find that's the biggest problem of being successful. And once you're there, it's harder to fix because it becomes more expensive. Now the real estate is high and it's harder to acquire. So I think it's important that you're taking efforts now to be able to kind of get a jump on that, because I think that will be a coming issue.
One thing that the City of Indianapolis is a policy now, we are driving all federal home or CDBG dollars on planned transit routes, and they've described that as, and then in affordable housing on transit routes, because as transit takes hold, the property values rise, but you can essentially create a false market for 30 years for affordable housing, so you stabilize that rent. And that way we make sure that we're not displacing people, and that everybody gets to enjoy the amenities along those transit routes as well.
I think that's really important. Here in this metropolitan area, in the National Capital Region, we've had early success with transit-oriented development to the point where some of the best transit in the region, some of the best transit you can have in the country, is increasingly difficult for people of lower incomes to afford to be near. And so that's been quite a challenge here. And I think that you're starting early on it is a really good thing. Let me turn to the public policy question that Brad had alluded to. So we have a market. I mean, it's one thing that comes across very clearly. There is a market for this. There are people who want it. There are consumers who want to be in lively downtowns. There are businesses prepared to invest there, either whether it's building housing or bringing offices and their companies there. The question arises in some places, well, why isn't it happening in my main street? And I think that one of the things that Brad mentioned earlier kind of points to some of the issues when he pointed to a new housing product that was useful in this process, but there needed to be a zoning change in order to make it possible. A lot of what folks would like to be doing may not be legal. So that's one question. To what degree have you found that public policy, whether it's zoning regulations or other actions of local government, maybe even state government, how does that affect your work in trying to create these places and trying to recruit folks to come there, for better or worse? So think about what's been helpful and what hasn't been helpful, and what your experience has been with dealing with the governmental side of things. Michael?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind from a Cleveland perspective is the importance that federal and state historic tax credits have had in creating a supply to meet the demand for downtown living. We had community leaders. I need to give a shout out to our Executive Vice President, Tom Yablonsky, who has worked for decades in community development in Cleveland, and really became an early leader in utilizing federal historic tax credits, was instrumental in creating a corollary Ohio program about 8 years ago. And those two programs together have really, especially coming out of the recession, allowed Cleveland to put together a capital stack for projects that would, again, take some of our older buildings out of the commercial market, create housing. We've been able to fill those apartments as quickly as they become available. And in this day and age, protecting and growing tax credit programs of any kind is something that requires ongoing vigilance and advocacy. At a local level, our Chamber of Commerce, our mayor, our county executive, everybody's been very supportive. We're going through, I'd say, an education process with our state legislature right now about the importance of the state historic preservation tax credit program and how essential that's been to big downtowns like Cleveland, but also smaller downtowns across Ohio. And maybe as part of that process, one of the benefits for some of our sister downtowns will be raising awareness about that particular program in smaller communities and creating opportunities for it to be utilized. So when folks say, hey, why is that not happening in my community? We're able to raise a little bit of awareness about some of the tools that exist that are out there.
So there's an example of a positive policy. Brad, has historic tax credits, preservation credits been a factor in Conway?
Yes, absolutely. We've seen them used effectively on a number of projects, and in some respects they may make the difference. We've also seen our city government in the early days use some CDBG money strategically to make a project happen that probably wouldn't have happened. With your original question, I think for, again, a small town, the importance of policy is great. I mean, cities really need to put some teeth in some of the policies that they have. You need to make sure that you maybe even do, we have several overlay districts that were designed to control the way things look or the way things development. And then I think you have to have some patience to watch these things occur. Between downtown Conway and Interstate 40 is about an 8-block stretch of road that is like anywhere in America. It was developed in the 60s and 70s, so big box retail, large parking lots in the front. And so our city put an overlay district in place several years ago that said any redevelopment on this section of Oak Street will be done in a traditional downtown manner, where buildings are pushed up to the street, wide sidewalks, trees, and nothing happened for 4 years until last year. And 3 projects occurred just all at one time, including a CVS pharmacy that initially didn't want to build that way. They wanted to build in a more suburban manner, and the city said, sorry, you have to build this way or choose another site, and they're building that way. And so now, because we had the right policy in place and we were patient to see it occur, the entire street looks different in a matter of 12 months. And then the public sees this works. We want more of that.
And you have people actually walking on the street then?
That's right.
I know in my own community, we had a similar situation, and as we were talking about the renovation, we'd show images, and we had an image of one of these sites and thinking about transforming it, and the image that we often show, and I still often present, there are a couple of people shown crossing the street and walking the sidewalk. They were actually photoshopped in, because when we took these pictures, there were never anybody walking there. And today, doing the kind of thing you were just describing, there are people all over the sidewalk. It's amazing what you can generate by providing the right kind of built environment. But as you say, that involved the government taking the right policy steps and saying, it's going to take a while, but over time it's going to play out. Mark?
Certainly, one of the driving factors of kind of the new quality of life in downtown Indianapolis has been the development of the cultural trail. The Indianapolis Cultural Trail is a very distinct walking bike path that connects all of our cultural districts, all of our large tourist amenities, our museums, our stadiums. And it had to, you had to get buy-in from the city to take a lane of parking and take a lane of travel lanes. And build this. I think one of the questions we're going to be asked later is, what kind of economic development practice was the most surprising? When I first heard of this concept, this cultural trail, I said, man, that's just not it sounds kind of, fluffy. And in fact, it's driven $1 billion worth of investment along the cultural trail.
Say that again.
$1 billion worth of
A
investment.
billion, that's the B billion.
Very, very rapidly as well. So it was certainly a mind shift for us to, we have two intersecting interstate highways that go through downtown Indianapolis. All of our traffic patterns are about getting people in the morning and out at night. And so converting one-way streets to two-way streets, traffic calming, creating the built environment that does allow for more walkable, bikeable communities. Our mayor is a former Marine, and he is very much into new forms of transportation, new forms of energy. So he's brought the first electric car share, all electric car share program to Indianapolis. He's extended our bike lanes, and so even 5 years ago, you didn't really see people biking around Indianapolis. Now people are actually using our streets for bikes to commute to work, and it's certainly been a cultural shift.
It's funny, I happened to have been there a few weeks ago and I got to see some of that, and it had been a few years since I had been in downtown Indianapolis, and it's quite a transformation to step out in the morning and see bicycles going by.
The cultural trail was the starting point to allow us to do the Pacers Bike Share program, and it has exceeded all expectations. So it's very, very successful. Now the challenge is, how do you take a uniform system and build it out across 400 square miles?
Mm-hmm. But I think this is a really interesting point, and I heard your mayor speak, and he similarly said that he didn't think that a bike trail was necessarily going to be a major economic development initiative for him when he started, but that's what it's become. And I believe he cited a major employer, I think it was Cummins, as saying they had to be there, that was a location issue for them, downtown by the cultural trail.
Companies do want to be located near the cultural trail. A lot of their employees will use it for exercising during the day, but also a lot of their employees are starting to live downtown. So having that very safe pedestrian and bikeway is very key. A lot of the housing that has gone up right adjacent to the cultural trail.
Fascinating. Now, Brad said something about patience earlier, and that certainly struck a chord with me because a lot of these things do take a while, and people tend to want to have instant results. You did this thing 10 minutes ago, nothing's happened. We put the seed in the pot and we're standing around watching for something to grow. But in fact, it takes time. We only change the built environment a little bit every year, economic changes, locational decisions. So that raises the question of how, what's the time frame? What do you do to momentum to ensure that, that this will be a program that you can stay with? I think about that as, myself, a recovering politician. When you're on a 4-year election cycle, and your colleagues are on a 4-year election cycle, you don't always have the easiest time telling people that something's going to be, 10, 15, 20 years away. Now, I know, Brad, in your case, I think you've been doing your job for 15 years.
That's right.
So, how do you do that?
Well, I think that you really need to celebrate success. For us, we've seen it occur really over the last 10 years. And I think we do a good job of celebrating those successes and helping people, stay mindful of what we're doing downtown. Look for opportunities, even in ways that you might not have seen. We had a fire in 2004 that took out 3 historic buildings in the middle of a block on Oak Street, which is really our main retail thoroughfare in downtown. And it was a case where the city realized they didn't have the policy in place to cover the design of what went back into that spot. The existing ordinances at the time would have allowed a strip mall to be built on those sites, which would have really killed our downtown.
So basically, the rules in place at that point made the traditional building that had been there illegal.
It didn't make it illegal, but it would allow for a variety of uses there, including
Inconsistent with
right. And so, because they couldn't respond probably quickly enough at that point, our nonprofit economic development organization bought the property and held it until they could do the appropriate work, until we could find an appropriate buyer that would agree to do it a certain way.
To prevent something bad from happening.
That's
in the
right.
interim.
And we actually went out and recruited probably one of our best local retailers that had been on the interstate in a shopping center for 15 years, and they came downtown and built, a 10,000 square foot store that has done exceptionally well and really helped push the momentum. So I think you really need to celebrate those wins, and you need to look for opportunity and take advantage of it when it presents itself.
I think it could be, the reverse could be true too. New arrivals to a very successful area in downtown might take it for granted that it was very deliberate work over 20 to 25 years to set the stage. And then you get to a point where it's a tipping point and things go very quickly. Mm-hmm. And so folks will look around and say, well, why isn't it happening in my area? Why can't we get this right now? And they don't fully appreciate the work of CDCs and groups like LISC in our community.
Community Development Corporation.
Community Development Corporations and Local Initial Support Corporation, which is an umbrella group that provides a lot of technical assistance and financing for CDCs. These groups are in the trenches day in, day out, and they've done it for years and years and years, and sometimes they become a victim of their own success because their whole original mission is now gone. They've built up their area. So people have to be patient and understand that it doesn't just happen. And that's, so as we look to spread the success, it takes neighborhood groups, it takes community development groups, and very, very deliberate strategies.
So let's talk a little about that. There are partners that you work with. As you've looked at what you've done, if you have an example of what's sort of the most surprisingly valuable partner that you've found in this work. Some of them are sort of obvious, but sometimes maybe people wouldn't even think. I mean, you were giving some examples, for instance, the nonprofit world as being an important part of creating this business environment. Which people might not automatically think of with regard to, say, a Chamber of Commerce.
Certainly, catalytic events, and then groups that come along with them. So for us, when we hosted the Super Bowl, it doesn't come with a lot of money. In fact, you got to raise a lot of money to be a Super Bowl host city. But that provided an opportunity for a lot of different groups to come together and say, how are we going to have a lasting legacy from our hosting of the Super Bowl? So we redeveloped and did a lot of streetscaping, housing redevelopment on the Near East Side, which is of downtown, which is an area that had been severely impacted by divestment and flight out of the center city. So pulling together community organizations, church groups, the NFL comes in and sometimes they'll want to have a positive, lasting image of their Super Bowl. So, looking at those opportunities but we were able to seize on those opportunities because of the work of our local initial support corporation, LISC, did quality of life planning in these neighborhoods around the core of downtown. And it's a very exhaustive process to get neighborhood and neighbor input into where they want to see their community go. So the work of planning and working with those nonprofits to get the neighborhood buy-in and really create a vision of what they want their neighborhood and their community to be is really critical to be able to seize opportunities like the Super Bowl. It's an all hands on deck type of experience.
Well, an essential set of partners in Cleveland that we haven't really talked about that much here has been the foundation community. In Cleveland, at least, we're very fortunate to have a strong philanthropic base. I came here yesterday from an annual luncheon that we hold for all the foundations that partner with us. And obviously, the financial support is important to what an organization like Downtown Cleveland Alliance does. But taking it back to your previous question, the support of the foundations and their partnership kind of builds in an opportunity to take the longer view. The foundations, by their very nature, are inclined to take the longer view and encourage their grantees to do the same. And I think that's certainly been the case with Cleveland, and especially with the downtown work that the foundations support. They've been very committed to downtown development, very committed to citywide reforms with regard to economic development and education. And so I'm not sure I would say that they're a surprising partner. They're one that we haven't talked about much here, and perhaps a set of partners that isn't always talked about or considered when we're thinking of economic and business development. But again, in Cleveland, they've been essential partners to us.
Yes, Michael, you're a business improvement district, your organization, and among the functions of business improvement districts are what we often refer to as place management. And while a lot of people think in terms of how we change the built environment, buildings and things like that, that what we do with the streets, there's an ongoing operational component to creating and maintaining a great downtown environment. I wonder if you could say something about place management as part of what you do and how important it is in creating this place that you're having success with.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of times business improvement districts themselves can be underutilized or even underappreciated partners in what takes place in downtowns. From Cleveland's perspective, I think we do a lot of work to maintain and improve the appearance of the pedestrian experience downtown, the sense of safety, the reality of safety, and that's something that our property owners take very seriously. I think that it was instrumental in why the downtown property owners wanted to form a business improvement district in the first place. That they recognized that the foundation for investment is a clean, safe, walkable environment that nobody wants to live, work, visit, or invest in a place that doesn't have those attributes of cleanliness and safety. And that's not to say that the personnel we put out into the street, our clean and safe ambassadors, make all the difference. They themselves have a big impact. But I think that the other thing that the business improvement district structure does is it creates a platform to bring partners to the table to focus on the unique issues that downtown faces. So, Downtown Cleveland Alliance meets regularly with the City of Cleveland, the Division of Police, the Cleveland State University Police, the Transit Authority Police, everybody who has jurisdiction over downtown, to stay out ahead of any safety issues that emerge, to address certain myths that may start to get out on emails or social media. We're able to respond quickly and accurately with what's actually going on. But again, can't overstate the importance of having an entity that's focused on creating the very environment and maintaining the physical environment that we're talking about today that's so attractive.
And doing event programming.
Yeah, sure. It's another thing that's not talked about a lot with regard to the physical realm is it's one thing to create a great space, but it's not, you can't take a if you build it they will come approach. If you create a great space, you need to activate that space and draw people towards it. And again, that's a big piece of what we find ourselves doing at Downtown Cleveland Alliance is holding big events. There's actually a wonderful photo of one in the report. Annually we do Winterfest which is always the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and it draws tens of thousands of people to downtown, and we light up the tree and light up downtown, and it's a real Cleveland tradition. But we also do a series of probably 75 other events across downtown throughout the year to activate our spaces and try to draw people in, keep people that commute into downtown after work for a few hours to create that 24/7 dynamic that we all want to have in our downtowns.
Thanks. So for the final round of questions, this is the sort of the lightning round. I want you each to just give, if you could give a few words of advice to any city around the country, whether it's local officials, counterparts to yourselves, people in chambers, or just general citizens. If you could give them a few advice about, what's the most important thing to do, what's the one or two, maybe three things, real quickly, what advice would you give them? Mark?
Never underestimate the importance of planning, and not just urban planning, but planning to seize on opportunities. That's very, very key. It sometimes feels like you're just doing a lot of studies and plans, but it's very key to set the stage for envisioning where your community is going to go.
Thanks. Brad?
Support elected officials who have the vision for this type of development and who have the courage to put the policy in place to make it happen. Because if you don't have those things, you're really dead.
I think building off of that, recognize the power of partnership, and certainly support the city officials and elected officials that share the vision that we're talking about today, but seek out partners, whether it's in the business community, the philanthropic community, to bring to the table that share that vision to push it forward, because it can't just be the city, it can't just be the business community, it's got to be everybody working together.
I'd like to thank each of you for taking the time to come here today to share your experience and expertise with us, and I'd ask everybody to join me in thanking the panel. Back to you.
Thanks, everyone. That concludes our program for today. The good news is that the fun is not over. If you can visit our website, you'll find the report there and all of the online resources that I mentioned earlier. It's smartgrowthamerica.org/core-values. Thanks a lot.